2, 1. Music. Welcome to this Vanilla SE today. My guest today is Khalid. I'm probably saying that badly. Khalid, could you tell us something about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Dali. My name is Khalid. I've been following street epistemology for a couple of years now, and found it interesting. Just wanted to get into discussion, or found it. It's a very engaging discussion. So the way you guys do it, so
Thank you.
you know,
So,
and
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, like, we spoke last couple of weeks back, I think, for a couple of hours. And if you want to continue that, maybe, or we can
Sure.
start all over again.
Yeah, we talked a lot prior about some of the foundational beliefs in Islam, and
Mhm.
really, I'm open to talking about that or any other thing that you'd like to bring to it. So, do you have a particular claim you would like us to explore? And should we review what we talked about a week ago or so?
Yeah, I think so. There are two different claims here. One is
Yeah.
the claim about Islam, and what precedes this claim is a claim about God itself.
Hmm.
So I think
Okay.
it's important to address both of them. I think to address the God claim first, because there is no
Okay.
Islam without God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell me the God claim in a sentence that we can put up on the screen?
Yeah. So I believe in the existence of God, the
Hmm.
creator of the universe, in the monotheistic God.
Hmm.
And some of the attributes of this God that I can deduce logically would be something that's all powerful, all
Okay.
knowledgeable, and
Hmm.
one in nature, one as in unity.
Okay.
There's
Unity.
no like three or four gods. And also independent of everything in existence. So
Okay.
that's my claim.
So I'm hearing 4 parts of it: unary, and all powerful, and all knowing, and fully independent. Those the
Hmm.
things.
Yes.
Okay. So I wonder if they'll be able to type that in a way that makes sense. But let's run with it. So uh, I guess the first question is, how do you know God is all knowing?
Uh, okay. How do I know God is all knowing? So by definition, so obviously, are we? There are two different things here. So by you asked me
Hmm.
the definition of God, right?
Sure.
So if there was something such as a creator of the universe, it would be all knowing by definition, because it would be someone that created the universe and all the knowledge of, if you sum total all the knowledge in the universe. Dali, you still there?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, can
I
you hear
just
me?
reset. Yes.
I don't think I can hear you.
Oh no. Do you not hear me?
I don't think I can hear you, Dali.
Uh-oh. Okay. Resetting you. And yep, everybody else hears. Khalid, do you hear us?
Yes.
Oh, good, good. I can't see you yet, but that'll happen next. And Nir was getting robot voice during the all-knowing answer.
Yes.
So could you start at the beginning of how you know that God is all-knowing?
Right. So I would say just using logic. Looking at the universe itself. If
Mm-hmm.
you do a sum total of the amount of knowledge in the universe,
Mm-hmm.
if this creator created this universe, it would be at least knowledgeable as much as the amount of knowledge in the universe, or more,
Okay.
by definition.
Could you please enable your camera?
Oh,
So God would know the sum total of knowledge in the entire universe.
right,
And so that's how we would know he's all-knowing,
right.
because he contains all the knowledge. Okay.
Right.
How
Yeah,
about the
it's pretty
unique
simple.
part? Okay, good.
Yeah, I guess uh, I don't see any problem in. So the claim is that if this creator is the creator of the universe, it would be all knowing.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you see,
It would logically follow that anything that created a thing would be all knowing about that thing.
right?
Is that what I hear? Okay. How about the
Yes,
unary aspect of God? How do we know that God is unary and not binary, trinary? I don't know what the alternatives.
because that would entail a contradiction where something all powerful,
Hmm.
uh, a multiplicity of all powerful things cannot coexist
Okay,
at the same time because of the
I see.
problem of will. So if you talk about two things that are
Hmm.
in so it's either two different names for the same thing, or one
Yeah.
overpowers the other. It's just
Okay,
like I
I
like to
see it.
give the example of a steering wheel in a car. You cannot have
Hmm.
a car with two steering wheels and both of them
Okay.
uh, you know what I mean? With two different
Yeah.
drivers with two different wheels, it's logically makes sense that something all powerful can only be one.
Okay. So how do you know about the all powerful part?
The same thing is all knowledgeable. The sum total of energy in the universe that is there, that we know that from the inception of the universe, whatever created this thing would have the
Okay.
equal amount or more amount of energy. So
Okay.
that's how.
Okay.
Or
So the
yeah,
demonstration of creations demonstrates all powerful and all knowledgeable.
yes.
Yes. Okay. And then let's see that. And there was independence. How do you know that God is independent of every aspect of creation?
Uh, so looking at the reality of the stuff that the universe is made up of, whatever it might be, stars, gases,
Yeah.
um, uh, galaxies. So by the nature of these things, um, they deteriorate or they disintegrate.
Hmm.
You don't have an infinite amount of stars in the universe, even by the modern scientific standards. They know there was an inception at some
Okay.
point. So by that definition, and also you cannot have an infinite regress of this
Mm.
universe also, because that entails a contradiction, because you cannot have an infinite number of universes causing each other,
Mm.
because then there will be never be a beginning of this universe would actually never exist.
Because
So whatever
because it would take infinitely long to get to us because infinite past is impossible. That kind of thinking.
because you're kind of saying there was a beginning and no beginning at the same time, which is a
Okay.
logical contradiction. Like, it doesn't make sense. So there had to be a beginning, and all we know about the universe. I mean, we can talk about other universes. We can speculate on what other universes might look like, but at least what we know about this universe is we know that it began whatever 14.2 billion years ago,
Hmm.
and therefore whatever caused it has to be independent.
Okay. Um, could something that starts independent become dependent? Could become intertwined?
Could something independent? Depends on what you're talking. Like, so we're talking about God, right?
Yeah.
Independent
Yeah.
God or anything.
Well, in this case, if there's something that is there anything that is fully independent other than God?
No.
No. Okay.
So
So
God is the only thing that's independent. Yeah.
okay. And is it possible for God to become entwined with his creation such that he loses his independence of it?
No.
Okay. Um, okay, so where do you learn these truths? Where did you get this?
Just applying basic logic, I guess. The laws of deduction, abduction,
Hmm.
induction, using the scientific method. Some data. that we acquired from there, which is basically looking at the universe, the Big Bang theory.
Mm-hmm.
We know there was an inception of the universe. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so basically, these attributes of God or of the Creator.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want to even use the word God, the Creator, whatever thing that caused this
Uh-huh.
universe, must entail these 3 or 4 properties, in my opinion.
Okay. I have a question. I might have to read it long. Can a programmer that created an application not know something about the code they wrote? For example, a bug is a product of the code that would be unknown to the programmer and its approximate cause. Uh, this is in our text. Are you able to see the text? The live show text?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Is it at the bottom right or?
It's in the stack of channels just above this voice channel.
Okay. Okay, I'm in it now.
Okay. So, can a programmer that created an application not know something about the code they wrote? For example, a bug is a product of the code that could be unknown to the programmer and its approximate cause.
Can a human programmer? Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, they could. They're working with limited whatever data they have,
Mm-hmm.
and it is possible.
Yeah.
Why not?
Okay.
What?
And if that's the case, does that give us any examples of a creator being omniscient about its creation?
No, I mean we're talking about 2 different things here.
Okay.
One is a human being with limited power, limited intellect, whatever, and we're talking about something that is unlimited in the sense that
Mm-hmm.
you cannot. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it's a false comparison, to be honest. If the intent was to see if the programmer, if you're trying to compare the programmer to God, yeah, I think
Yeah.
2 different things, 2 different categories completely.
Do you have personal experience of God?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, in terms of, I think my entire life is an experience. I mean, if you want to
Okay.
define how do you define experience? I guess
Well, I guess I mean
some sort of.
a personal experience where you can tell the difference between whether a God exists or doesn't. You know actually uh, met God, interacted with God, any of that kind of thing.
No,
No.
no, I wouldn't say so.
Okay. Uh, how would I be able to tell whether God exists or not? I've heard that you have some logic that leads you to this conclusion.
Right.
Is there? I've heard many of those arguments. I am somewhat familiar with a lot of the stuff, mostly going through the Christian Thomas Aquinas thing. So I might have some of the details completely backwards. Sorry. Um, how could I tell the difference in a world where God exists or not?
Okay, so again, that's a question of epistemology. How do we know anything is true, right? So, in my, let me ask you this, if you don't mind me,
Yeah.
making this into a discussion. Like, so what would
Oh, totally.
your what is your true standard in terms of how do you know anything is true?
How do I know anything is true? Um, I make a connected series of observations, and I learn that through a whole bunch of looking it over and over, it seems like my physical world is one that follows laws of conservation. And then with the math of understanding the physical world, I can then make observations. And if I do enough statistics, be able to make high reliability predictions about what will happen with a machine I build or something, for example. And if I do it
Right.
really well enough, maybe it's safe enough to fly on a jet. You follow? That there are ways to test these things to the point where the chances are 1 in a million that it will fail. That kind of thing. And that's how I know things. I don't know things to any sort of perfection. For me, getting up to like a sigma 5 or 6, which is like getting way down into the edge of the statistics,
Right.
is as much as I can ever know anything.
Right. Yeah,
So
and
that's how I see truth.
so I would actually agree with you completely. So
Mhm.
my truth standard seems to be in line. What you're telling me is that you would accept a probabilistic type of framework
Yes.
to accept
Yes, I
something
do.
to be true. So
Mhm.
I'm using the same method actually. I believe certain things are true because they're more likely to be true than not.
Mm.
You get it?
Okay.
So because of the nature of reality, I guess you can boil down, or you can reduce even logic and mathematics. People will find things in there, then bring up contradictions, or they can be skeptical of even these things. So
Mhm.
I believe something is true because it is more likely to be true than not. So I believe God exists because
Mhm.
it is more likely that God exists than not. Looking at the
Okay.
reality of the nature, are in all the arguments you probably heard of, the moral arguments, the ontological arguments, the argument from design, argument from
Mhm.
teleology.
Yeah.
um so it just, to me, it's painfully obvious that God exists. The concept of God, where keeping to the basic idea of who God is, like all powerful, all knowledgeable, and
Mhm.
one and independent nature. And obviously the other attributes of God come in later from through scripture. God of mercy. So we believe in Islam that
Mhm.
God is full of mercy to mankind. Um, so all these
Okay.
things come obviously with scripture. Even Bible talks about it. So going back to the truth standard,
Mhm.
of how I know anything is true is because
Mhm.
I apply a probabilistic type of reasoning to logic, to verifiable empiricism, to testimonial evidence from people, um, and even experience. There are a
Mhm.
lot of things that are unfalsifiable, in my opinion. Um, and we can probably talk about that too, if you
Mhm.
want. Because I think
Yeah.
this question comes
Things that
up a
are
lot. That
unfalsifiable, sure.
many things that are unfalsifiable. I mean, you cannot even the fact that I accept rationality is unfalsifiable. The fact that
Mm.
um, you cannot falsify mathematics or something like that using the scientific method, because numbers
Mhm.
are things that are outside uh, of the natural world.
Numbers.
So
Okay.
numbers, yeah.
Yeah. Is this
And
like a platonic situation where numbers exist in a realm unto their own? They exist without necessarily causing something back and forth.
yeah, yeah, I mean, I don't know where they exist, to be honest. Like, it's something. It's ontological. It's in our mind. We accept them to. We accept their existence, but they're not to be found in nature. Like, you cannot put, mathematics under a microscope. You
Okay.
cannot put consciousness under a microscope. So these things are unfalsifiable. And just because something's unfalsifiable doesn't make it untrue, in my opinion.
Hmm. Okay. Uh, Aside from numbers, could you give me an example of something that's unfalsifiable yet you should have a high confidence that it's true?
Uh, my rationality.
Okay. Uh, so
My rationality, or my consciousness, or my subjective experience is unfalsifiable. You cannot put that under a microscope. If I eat a strawberry or eat a chocolate,
yeah.
you cannot put that under a microscope. um,
Sorry, my bird is being
so
naughty. Naughty bird. Okay. Uh, so if someone were to
so
no consciousness under a
sorry,
microscope, no, I don't think that's a good useful question. Sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, past events are, in my opinion, unfalsifiable from a scientific point of view. Past
Oh,
events, rationality, mathematics, logic, things like gravity
okay.
itself. the scientific method itself, because the scientific method is predicated
Hmm.
upon a set of first principles that are unfalsifiable.
Hmm.
For example,
Okay.
the future will behave like the past, or the future will behave like the present. Is
Right.
basically a belief, really.
Yeah, it's an assumption. Yeah.
It's
So
an
far it's
assumption.
worked that
Yeah.
way that we can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Statistically, it might be quite reliable, but we shouldn't believe it with content completely.
Right.
Um, if math or logic were to lead to conclusion we could test as being wrong, wouldn't we say that those had been falsified? If we found a flaw in math or logic, could would that mean that it was had been falsified?
A flaw in math or logic. Um, I guess you could say so. I mean, I think these are still axioms, right? That
Sure.
you can play around with, and I don't know if anyone has ever done that, but I guess
Mm,
if you wanna completely remove logic and rationality, you can,
yeah.
and and I guess I would have to see what falsifies logic. I guess if you don't accept
Right.
logic, then there's no point doing anything at all.
I hear you. I hear you. I mean,
Right.
like the questions of divide by zero. Well, okay, we just disallow it. We say you're not allowed to divide by zero because that would falsify math, right? So they added an ad hoc, and it works. Avoid divide by zero, you're okay. That sort of thing. Um, let's see. Do you say that does God act on the world?
Does God interact with the world?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. God. Yeah. So I believe in a God that created conscious beings, and God has communicated with human. So there are two options really here. It is again a
Hmm.
dichotomous type of question. Um,
Okay.
there are two possibilities: a creator that created all this life, all the experience that human beings go through from the beginning of their birth to their death. Um, all of these things. There are two options. You have one
Hmm.
God, a deist type of God that has the ability to communicate with mankind, and one God that
Hmm.
has the ability to, or does not communicate with mankind. So between the
Hmm.
two, I'd say it's more likely that if we are conscious beings with feelings of mercy and all these things, you would
Hmm.
imagine that between those two options, it is more likely that a God that communicates with mankind exists, rather than a deist type of God that
Hmm.
just created this universe pointlessly, or doesn't care. So for me, logically, it doesn't make sense. I mean, yeah,
Okay.
I don't know if that makes.
So
Yeah,
yes, that's one of the abductive conclusions where you say because it's more likely, then that makes it the obvious choice.
right.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Other questions. All right. Well, we haven't asked today, but this is something somebody's bringing up. Do you believe that the Bible, the Torah, the New and Old Testament are corrupted versions of God's true word? These are
Yes,
questions from
they've
the
been.
audience, so they're not necessarily down a particular path. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I believe they've been changed over time.
Okay. How do you know how they got corrupted? What was the means by which they could become corrupted?
I personally don't know what happened, but yeah, I mean, so there could be many reasons. People didn't want to follow the laws. People didn't, you know. So one of the theories is that the Christian tradition was actually on the right path, or was the truth up to like 300 years of its inception, until it got introduced to the Roman Empire, where we believe that a lot of the pagan beliefs of the Romans, like God having son and father and mother and all these things, got introduced into the Christian tradition. So it could be by force, by people just not wanting to accept the truth. I don't know why people don't. want to accept the truth, but it's something that I can't answer.
Okay. There's a question somebody wants to ask, but I have to ask another question in front of it. If when God reacts with reality, when God interacts with us, should that be detectable by our scientific methods, or should we not expect science to be able to see the interaction?
But the scientific method, the scientific method is a relatively new phenomenon, right?
Mm-hmm.
The scientific method was actually formulated probably 1,000 years ago or something by
Okay.
I think Muslim scholar. I think his name was Ibn Haytham, was the first scientist or something like that.
Yeah.
But so scientific method. When we talk about scientific method, it's the process of where we observe something, make a hypothesis, and then falsify things. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, I mean, if God did interact with Jesus Christ or Moses, or with Prophet Muhammad or Prophet Adam, um, it may not be possible for other people to see that. I mean, we don't know. I mean, it's an interaction between two entities that if God wants other people to see, I mean, they could. But it's from what I know, when the revelations came to the prophets, only the prophets were able to receive it and pass it on to other human beings.
Okay. There's a question I'm going to try to bring it up. Christians would say that the Quran has been corrupted, while Muslims would say that the Old Testament and maybe the New Testament have been corrupted. And I think in both cases, they're going to say, my correct book tells me that your other book is broken. Do you
Yeah.
see how it's like there's a symmetry to this argument? Could you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean that really boils down to the evidences of what their claim is, what is it that they are. Yeah, I mean you have to further look into what their claim is, not just accept whatever people say. So I don't want people to accept whatever the Quran says just of face value. They need to further
Mm-hmm.
investigate, read it through, understand, look at reality, compared with other
Mm-hmm.
scriptures. And I would encourage most Christians to do the same thing, to look into their scripture, question if it's
Okay.
true, what are their sources, what are the claims it's making. So for me, like approaching Christianity, for me personally,
Yeah.
like like we spoke about this 2 weeks back, is that the idea of Trinitarianism doesn't. I
Mm-hmm.
find it to be a contradiction in itself. Like theologically, like it doesn't make sense to me that God would be one in three and three in one, or God in
Mm-hmm.
flesh, something infinitely powerful, infinitely eternal, would come down in the form of human being, is a contradiction. So there are certain things that are impossible for this God to be. So it's
Mm-hmm.
impossible for God to be not God. It's impossible for
Okay.
God to be something less than all powerful, less than all knowledgeable, or less
Mm-hmm.
than all eternal, or whatever. So the idea of God becoming an incarnate in itself is a contradictory idea. No matter how people try
Okay.
to justify it, I know people try to justify using the idea of love, that God loves us. That's why He came down as a human. But unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of violates the fundamental nature of this Creator. So
Yes.
God can still love
I
us.
think.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah. Go ahead.
that was
I think we
yeah.
had timing issues. You had a prayer. Do you want to take a break for a
No,
few minutes and come back for that?
no. I have time. We can go up to the 6:45. 6:45
Okay.
would be perfect. Yeah.
Okay. So is that an hour from now?
Yes, approximately.
Okay. I had my timing set right. Great. Great. I suspect we'll be long done by then. Normally I want to have these conversations mostly done within an hour. I don't want to wear people out. Okay.
Am I supposed to be
Um,
reading through the questions here? Sorry, I'm not
it
following the
isn't
chat, but
important that you should. I'm perhaps selecting from them sometimes. Um, is God all powerful only in our universe or even outside it? Oh, okay. I see the question. I guess this is a question of whether God is powerful in more than one universe, or I'm not sure I understand that one. Let me put
Yeah,
it up
even
so you can see it.
even if yeah, I saw that question. So even if there are multiple universes,
Hmm.
God would still be all powerful. It would still be the creator of all these other
Okay.
universes. Um,
Okay. Uh, okay. So let's see. I'm going to go back. I'm going to ignore their questions and go back on my track. Um,
sure.
just a moment. Ha- So in the case of the Christians versus Islam, you find their claim to be illogical, that God would come down, or could not, maybe could, but would come down and populate Jesus, and that whole thing that's illogical to you, and that's why their claim does not make sense. Is that what I hear?
Right. So yeah, something eternal in nature would become less than all eternal. Would confine himself to space and time in the form of
I
Jesus or
see.
whoever. So that
Because
that's
it
a
would be giving up.
contradiction. Yeah.
It would not make sense to give up that much power.
Right.
Okay,
Well,
I
yeah. I mean,
understand.
if God is all eternal, if God is all eternal, all powerful, that's for eternity. It's not. It doesn't change. Um, yeah. That
Hmm.
God cannot become less than all knowledgeable or less than all
I see.
powerful. Um, yeah.
So the Trinity requires too much that does not make sense in order to accept it. So where does the New Testament come in? Was the New Testament ever the Word of God?
Yes.
Or was that? Yes, it
Well,
was.
yes. So we believe that the revelation that was given to Jesus, which
Uh huh.
is also a prophet
Okay.
in Islam, was the true message, where it was sent for a specific people for a specific
Hmm.
amount of time for the children of Israel. The mission of Jesus wasn't for he wasn't really like a leader that led a whole nation or anything, but it was for really to bring back people back to the message of Moses,
Yeah.
essentially. And as far as I know, I don't think he brought any new laws. He came to reconfirm the laws of Moses. So we accept all of those things. But over time, as
Hmm.
things start changing, or uh, that's where a lot of the other things came in, like Trinitarianism.
Hmm. Um, how does Islam see Paul? Paul in the New Testament makes an enormous
Right,
amount of input into the theology. Uh, is
right.
is Paul correct or is Paul incorrect?
So yeah, that's I think Muslim scholars that study this field of
Hmm.
Christianity, they actually accept that Paul is the one who actually changed the true message of Jesus. So we believe that Paul is the one. So the Christians that follow Christianity today, we believe are actually following Paul, not Jesus Christ, according to our
Yes.
belief.
Yes.
Um,
I would
but
agree with that.
but the true disciples of Jesus were had the same message as Islam, as Prophet Moses, as Abraham, Solomon,
Okay.
David. All these were prophets. So yeah,
Okay. Um, so what is the can you give me 5 reasons why I would choose the Quran to be correct as compared to the other things which also claim to be correct? I mean, there's a big stack of them. Certainly not
right.
just
Okay,
the
so
Bible. There's other, like the Bhagavad Gita and all the other ones.
if you want to start examining the scripture, so one of the first things I want to ask you is like, so you accept that two things: God exists and one of the religions must be true in
Oh,
order
one of
for
the
you to
existing
even start.
religions must be true. Okay.
One of the in one of the religions, yeah, in present day must be true.
Okay.
These are the. I'm assuming if you're approaching this question of examining scriptures, you would have to presuppose these two premises. Like you have to accept that there is a creator, and then there is one of the religions must be true. Um, is that something you accept, or yeah, at least for
Me?
the sake of this argument, right?
Oh, I'm happy for the sake of the argument to say, okay, if I'm at the starting point of that at least one God exists and at least one of the current religions must actually be accurate about that God, then okay, I'm happy to go with you on that so far.
Okay. So when you say at least one God exists, do you believe there might be more than one God, or what is your definition of God?
Um, okay, outside of the argument, I don't actually think that a God exists. So my definition of God wouldn't matter to the question. I would have to accept the definition of God of the person describing God to me.
Okay. Okay. So yeah,
Yeah.
from a Quranic perspective, from Islamic perspective, there
Hmm.
is only one God, and
Okay.
other religions might be trying to grapple with the same idea, same concept, same being, but they might have different interpretation of who this God is, I guess. So I think, yeah, if you want to put it that way. So yeah, when you look at different scriptures, you look at the claims compared to, you said, Christianity or Judaism.
Hmm.
What was your question again regarding the Quran? Why is it true?
Well, yeah. Can you give me?
Sorry.
I was asking for a round five, but I don't care what the number is. Uh, reasons why I would choose the Quran and not the other uh, claims to also be a similar thing, a religion that is true that describes God.
Okay. So the reasons I would accept Quran would be because of the fact that the Quran, first of all, makes a claim about this creator. And
Hmm.
also, the interesting thing about the Quran is it actually makes about the Quran itself that this is a book from this creator. It is a true message. So these are very, very bold and big claims that a book is
Hmm.
making that I don't think any other book makes that claim. So if you read the Quran from the beginning, right, the
Hmm.
first few verses, right away it says, "This is a book from God without doubt, for people who
Hmm.
are, God fearing," and so on and so forth. So for me, in order to make a truth claim, or in order for something to be absolutely true, I
Hmm.
would imagine that at least it would make a claim of truth,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Yeah, I think it's a very important thing that a lot of people, I don't think they focus on it too much. But for instance, like, if there's a book of Buddhists or whatever,
Hmm.
they don't really make an explicit claim of having the truth. Like, they don't
Okay.
intend to invite other mankind or whatever to their
Yes.
religion, whatever they follow. And Buddhism itself, I don't think class. I would consider it to be a religion in a classical sense. That, religion with God and a creation story and all
Hmm.
that. So. Um, so Quran makes the claim of having the truth. The message of the Quran would be the second thing. The entire message, if you read through it, is coherent, is logical. It is a beautiful guidance for people how to live, and so on and so forth. It is also miraculous in a lot of ways. So there are linguistic miracles in the Quran. There are scientific statements in the Quran which have, I would say,
Hmm.
probably impossible for a person living in the 7th century to come up with all these. It's not just one or two, there are many.
Okay.
Then there are predictions of the future in the Quran. Um,
Hmm.
there is the idea of the Quran being preserved for 1400 years, using, by memory, and also written form. So overall, just looking at the message of the Quran and all these things that are listed, I would say,
Hmm.
these are evidences the Quran is true, given that there is a creator.
Okay. Uh, I've got some people who'd like to ask you some questions. If that's okay, I'd like to unmute the room and let them talk to you.
Sure.
So, let's see. Chucky, did you have a question you could voice? Hmm. Does not have one ready. That's okay. Yes. What most, if anything, makes you occasionally wonder about the truth of your God claim?
What makes me wonder about my truth claim?
Yes. What, if anything? If you ever wonder about the truth of it, do you have anything associated with that?
Yeah, I would. The only thing associated with that is I would like it to be. I would like to accept whatever the truth is, and keep on re-examining and assessing and looking at other claims out there.
Uh-huh. So, looking at other claims is the closest you ever get to doubting?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I would doubt my faith. I would say I'm pretty confident, because if a creator does exist and if there is a religion, a way of life, then it would be Islam, because
Mhm.
it just makes so much sense.
Okay. So, what I've heard is that for each of these large claims, it's an abductive choice from amongst the most probable, or a deductive choice because that means what that means, and it must be that way. It couldn't be anything else. Is that roughly the two sides?
Yeah, I think you mean in terms of which claim though? Which claim were you talking about?
Actually, a whole bunch of them. The first four
Right.
that we had in the definition of God, plus there's a bunch of things about the Quran that fell into the abductive category,
Right.
where here's here's a reason that makes it more likely than the alternatives.
Right. Yeah. So remember we spoke about our truth standard. Why is something true? Because it is more likely to be true than the other options that are out there. And this is actually a perfect. I don't know if people realize this, but the abductive reasoning or inference to
Hmm.
best explanation is actually a widely accepted and a method used within the scientific community, and it's
Okay.
used in law, criminal justice, and all these things. So
Hmm.
it, yeah, so inference to the best explanation out of all the possible explanations out there.
Hmm.
You look at atheism, agnosticism, Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, Islam. Uh, One of them have to be true. So the fact that when I ask a question to people, what is their intent, or what do they want to
Hmm.
do with whatever street epistemology or debate discussion,
Yeah.
they say they wanna arrive at the truth, whatever the truth is. So the truth can
Okay.
only be one of these finite things. you you know
Hmm.
you cannot have you cannot my claim is that uh truth cannot be unknowable, because truth by definition is knowable either logically or empirically. So even if someone asks me a question like, it is knowable if there's a giant purple elephant on Pluto right now. Logically, it is knowable. Yes, there
Uh-huh.
is a way. If I had the technology to scan every crevice of the solar system, it would be knowable.
Okay.
Obviously, you have to define what a giant elephant looks like. Is it made of atoms? Is it whatever gas, whatever? So depending on the scope of work, scope of the claim,
Hmm.
truth is by definition knowable,
Hmm.
either empirically or
Okay.
logically.
Okay.
So you cannot
We
say
talked.
that truth is unlimited. Yeah.
Right. Right. I thank you for that. Uh, we may have talked about this before. What your definition of truth is? You asked me about mine, and you said you
Mhm.
agreed to someone with mine. Could you tell us your definition of truth?
Yeah. So truth would be something that comports with reality, exists in the real world, and is independent of human subjectivity. It no matter what
Okay.
people think, the truth will still remain the truth. It doesn't change. It is an unchanging reality.
Okay. The Pasta Mike is asking, can truth be unique to the individual? Is truth a subjective thing? Could we have separate truths?
No, I would say truth is not subjective.
Okay.
Truth is objective by definition.
Okay.
Um,
Uh, how does recognition of a method of reasoning relate to the truth of a supernatural claim?
how does the recognition of method of reason relate to the truth of a supernatural claim? I don't understand the question, to be honest. How does recognition
Um,
of a method of reasoning?
yeah, so you're recognizing a method of reasoning that gets you, I think, mostly to an abductive answer or deductive answers. And is that is reasoning able to tell you about something supernatural? Is that able to tell you the metaphysical reality of it? Can we get there from our armchair?
So yeah, I don't know about armchair, but I believe that if God does exist, so a lot of people just presuppose that God doesn't exist, therefore truths are unknowable. But if or religion is
Hmm.
unknowable, whatever. But if God does exist, then the truth is knowable, and it is actually the evidences for it would be fairly simple for people of all walks of life to accept. So you don't have to be a double major in philosophy or know a half half a dictionary worth of words or be a
Hmm.
theoretical physicist to arrive at truth. So someone living in the 15th century, up in the mountains and herding goats or whatever, even they would be able to arrive at the truth if God exists.
Hmm.
So the message of so this kind of debunks the whole idea of scientism, where people just think that things have to be empirically verifiable in order for them to be true, which
Hmm.
which is a flawed way of looking at things. Because if God truly exists, then there are other forms of arriving in truth. There's testimonial. There is uh,
Hmm.
logical truth. There is self-evident truths and all these things, not just scientific in nature. So yeah, I mean, and you apply the probabilistic type of reasoning to all of these things, and come to a conclusion. Because in this lifespan that we have, if we are out on a mission to do street epistemology and arrive at truth, then to assume that the truth does not exist, or it's something that'll happen in the future. I don't know if people are waiting for some sort of a scientific experiment to
Hmm.
detect God or something like that. So I find it kind of absurd idea, because uh, the all the evidences that you need to
Hmm.
know if God exists are already there. It's
Hmm.
really people's preferences of what they think is evidence, or uh, they've made up their own mind about what they think evidence should look like. So, which is
Okay.
where people get stuck, I think.
What kind of evidence would you accept to prove that Zeus did not exist?
What's the definition of Zeus?
Zeus is a god from the Greeks or the Romans that was living on top of Mount Olympus. I don't think he was the one with the lightning bolts, but he was the top one. And choose whichever one you mean. I'm starting with the idea of a god that we both agree does not exist. Probably. How would
Yeah.
we
So,
show that that god does not exist?
how do we show that God does not exist? You mean a God with with lowercase g, right? People that people think is
Yeah.
God or whatever. So yeah, I mean, to be honest, I mean, if that question, you might want to ask someone who worships Zeus, maybe, to see why they
Hmm.
do accept. Zeus as God. For me personally, I mean,
Yeah,
like
I'm trying to
you're
I'm trying to
definitely.
find what would falsify a god. And so starting with a god that we both think is false should be the kind of starting place where I could falsify a god. I mean, if Zeus is defined as lives on Mount Olympus, I could go to the top of Mount Olympus and say, nope, not here. And then somebody might redefine and say, no, he doesn't live on Olympus. That's metaphoric or something like that. Right. But is a god like Zeus falsifiable?
So you're looking for some sort of a. You want to see basically God in the natural world? Is that because falsification is a scientific method? It's one
Yeah.
of the steps in the scientific method, and it is
Yeah.
limited to the natural world. So like I said, it's important to define words too. Like if we talking about a
Sure.
God that you said that you would accept is my definition is something that is independent of space and time,
Hmm.
and so no matter how much you try, you cannot sit there in a lab looking at your telescope looking for God or under your microscope, because
Hmm.
God by definition is not confined by space and time. It's independent of the natural world. So
Okay.
it is a type of a setup for failure, in my opinion. It's like giving you a measuring tape, asking you to weigh yourself. You see,
I
and
see.
when you can't weigh yourself, you'll be like, oh, you can't weigh me. but the tool that is being used here
Hmm.
is not correct.
Okay. So the correct tool is to look at all the gods that make the claim and choose the one that seems the most likely.
Yeah, one
Is that
one
correct?
that's one of the methods, not just one, but
Okay.
look at the nature of reality first. So you can only start with yourself, right? You can only start with yourself. So, like we spoke last time, the idea of skepticism, there are certain things you can start with, is your own reality. If you exist as a conscious being, that must follow that something else exists out there for eternity, because something cannot come from nothing. If you are something and you've already conceded the fact that you're a conscious being that exists in reality, then it follows that something else out there exists, um, because of the logical principle that something cannot come from absolute nothingness. So
Okay.
we've already accepted there to be something that exists for eternity. Now, from there, you built on your epistemology, I guess. Uh, it's easier now because now we know, the nature of the universe is expanding, and
Okay.
there was a beginning, and from that you can follow again using the probabilistic type of framework. Is that it's really logical, because effects are caused by causes. You cannot have an effect without a cause. So we see the
Right.
effect of the
First principle.
reality of this universe. Yes,
Hmm.
the reality of the universe. So from there you follow on, and then you look at claims and who is making the claim of the truth. And out of all of the
Hmm.
world religions, um, only 5 or 6 of them I think are or even 4 of them. I think 4 of them are monotheistic, and out of them only 2 of them make the claim of absolute truth, which is Islam and Christianity.
Okay.
And the truth has to be one of these 2 religions, in my opinion.
Okay. You narrowed it down to those two, and of them you can choose easily. Uh, can people think and be absolutely convinced they know truth, but in fact, objectively, they are wrong?
Yes,
Yeah.
people can believe whatever they want, but it is possible that they're objectively wrong. Yes.
Okay. Um, Ivy asks, do you know of a method for us humans to confirm or deny the existence of any particular God? I think you might have answered that, and the answer is no, it's the wrong tool. That we're trying to use science to measure something that is outside of nature.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I mean, you have to kind of define what you mean by falsification. if that's what they were asking, I guess.
Maybe. Yeah. So in general, SAE just asks for the method for
I don't think I can hear you. Hey, Del, you still there?
I just reset. Near asks why you do not believe in Zeus. And I think you've answered that, but if you want to, you can expand on it. Are you hearing me okay?
Hey, can you
I
hear
hear
me?
you. Are you back?
Yep.
Do you
I
hear me
can hear
okay?
you.
Good.
Yes.
Good. Okay. So Near asks why you do not believe in Zeus.
Okay, you have to define me what Zeus is, and I don't mind answering the question. I just need to understand what Zeus is and give me a proper definition of Zeus. Properties,
Zeus
attributes.
the properties of Zeus are he's the top god of the Greek pantheon. He may throw lightning at people, and he can transform into various animals and have sex with people and make them pregnant. Those are some things that I know Zeus did. I don't have a complete answer. My Zeus theology is weak.
Okay, so is Zeus the creator of the universe, or just is there within the universe doing all these things, or was
I
it
don't
born
know
at some
whether in
point?
Zeus theology whether Zeus is the necessary creator of the entire universe. I don't know that.
Okay. Yeah, as far as I know, from what I've read on Wikipedia, definition of Zeus is a myth, right? By definition, it's a story. Again, you have to really look at the evidences of what the claims are. Are they actually making a proper claim of of truth or not? If it's just some storybook written by people, then obviously, if by definition you can dismiss them because by their own admission, it's not true. It's supposed to be a myth, right? Unlike some of the claims made by Christianity or Islam, where they say it's not a myth. It's really, no matter what other people might say, but according to the admission of the people who propagate it, who follow it, who accept it to be true, they don't consider it to be a myth, right?
Okay.
So, by definition, if something is a myth, like the Zeus god or Thor or whatever it might be, then yeah, you can dismiss it. I guess I have no reason to accept it to be my creator. It doesn't claim to be my creator. It doesn't have it doesn't have a message for me about what's going to happen to me in the future or whatever.
Okay. Near follows up with what makes a truth claim proper? How do you discern a proper truth claim from a non-proper?
A proper truth claim would be something that itself at least claims to be true or absolutely true and has the intent of so if it's a religion, it must talk about who God is and why you're here, what are you doing in the future, what is your purpose of life and stuff like that. Because we have to understand, if we're talking about belief systems, like how does it translate into our lives? Like what does it mean to believe in Islam? What does it mean to believe in Christianity? Whatever. So out of all of the claims out there, like I would honestly ask people to look into this. Like Islam and Christianity are the only ones that proselytize in a way that they want others to accept it. Obviously,
Yes.
I don't accept forceful proselytization or anything like that. People need to. Yeah, you cannot force beliefs on people. That's my personal opinion. Like, no matter what happens, like If someone,
Okay.
you cannot force beliefs on people. So Islam and Christianity are only two religions that actively proselytize, that are out there preaching, want others to accept the truth because they truly believe they have the truth. Like I don't see this
Okay.
with, I've lived in India for, that's where I'm originally from.
Yeah.
So I don't see Hindus doing that. I don't see Sikhs or Buddhists or even Jews. Like
Okay.
they don't really proselytize.
How do you feel about Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, and Scientologists?
So Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons would be under the Christian category,
Okay.
right? They're denominations or sects that sprung from Christianity. So if I look at their truth claims, so if you want to single out people who proselytize and look at it that way, I mean, you have to look at the other things that they're preaching also. So if they're still preaching Trinitarianism, for me, I've already rejected that based on my evidences, based on my assessment of
Yes.
their claims.
Okay.
Scientology, I don't know too much about Scientology. I don't even know what their claim is. Do
Okay.
they believe in God or?
I don't think they believe in a deity. I think they think that we are trillions of years old, and there's something with Xenu bringing a lot of people with volcanoes, and engrams are the reason why we have bad thoughts. I'm very much not familiar enough with Scientology. I understand it was a friend of Robert Heinlein's, L. Ron Hubbard, that originally wrote it, and then it took off from there.
Okay.
So a little hard to know. Um, Chucky asks, there are plenty of Hindus that are willing to claim their religion is true. Do they have a proper claim?
Yeah, if they claim to be true, again, I don't have a problem with people claiming for something to be true, but what is their message? Like, what do they follow? Like, what is their claim about God? And I don't think Hinduism believes in one God either. Like, they have polytheism going on. So for me, logically, again, it doesn't make sense to even consider Hinduism if the version of Hinduism that they're preaching is polytheistic in nature. Then I've
Yeah.
already rejected that because for me, a religion has to be monotheistic for me to
Okay.
consider it. And
I think
yeah,
that's a lot of the reason you reject Christianity is they're kind of not unary,
right.
kind of
Although
polytheistic.
if you have a discussion with a theologian, they do say that they ultimately believe in this one God, but it is somehow one in three and three in one,
Mm-hmm.
which is they're unable to explain why that is.
Okay.
There's all sorts of examples that they give: three persons and or one person and three body. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
If anybody has questions, I invite you to ask them. Anybody in the room?
Hi, Khalid.
hey,
Hello.
hey, how are you?
I'm enjoying this SE. You guys are doing great.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Cool.
Question, Khalid.
Yep.
Does the environment in which you were raised in affect on the path of whether you have a belief or not belief?
It might a little bit. Everyone's born into something, so their outlook on reality might be slightly affected. But again, everyone needs to go back to complete skepticism or whatever it might take to start from point zero, and it will completely wipe off any past experience or upbringing kind of issues. So for me personally, like although I was born into a Muslim family, I did the practice Islam and all these things when I was young. But then at a point when I started inquiring further and further, it actually, it just made more sense that I need to. This is why this is true. Like, just because I was born in Islam, and so let's say if Islam is the absolute truth, and just because I was born in it, doesn't mean I'm at fault or like not looking at it critically, I guess. But I do agree that every Muslim or every Christian or every atheist, whoever is born in whatever family, they need to examine all the evidences to come to their belief or their reality, which is, if again, which brings back the question of like why we believe, right? Which is a separate question, but I guess I've answered my question. I think it was JCC, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Good.
Dali, if you don't mind, if I have a
yes.
question for you.
Yes, please.
So, what are your theological preferences, or what are your beliefs in terms of reality?
Okay. Real briefly, I grew up a Christian until I was maybe 20 as a young earth creationist in a very fundamentalist right-wing missionary school. And then I shifted through a very liberal form of Christianity that kept dropping things off, and eventually stopped calling myself a Christian, had a vague belief in God, went through a whole bunch of Eastern religions and tried things on, and landed in Judaism in 2000 and got really into that and started a study of the Pentateuch. And in 2007, I got up to Deuteronomy, and the cognitive dissonance just killed me. And by 2008, I was an atheist, and I've been an atheist ever since. Went through several years of angry atheist phase. Now I'm much less angry atheist.
Okay. So your belief about God. My question was your belief about God. So you believe God does not exist, or?
I believe
I
believe it's very unlikely that God exists. I'm uncertain about it, but I am a lot more believing that direction than the other way. I think it is definitely the most likely condition.
Okay. And so you're not really an agnostic in the sense that you don't claim that you don't know, or?
Well, I'm agnostic about everything. I don't hold anything to perfect certainty, but I'm about as sure that God doesn't exist as I am that leprechauns don't exist. So I'm right up against the edge there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what evidence would convince you that God exists?
Demonstrations of supernatural. Communications from God would really help. Obviously, a revelation to me is only hearsay to anybody else. So I would really, really be much more impressed with God spoke to me and a bunch of other people at the same time, and we're able to compare notes, and we get the same answers, and it's not by some simple light show or Disney trick. I want to be able to interact with God and have God answer questions or perform things that are demonstrations. And I don't ask for any specific demonstrations, but how about something that violates physics in an important way? Please, make a thing pop up in front of me here. Those kind of things. And it's an objective, testable, repeatable bunch of people being able to observe. Those kind of things really impress me. So that's what would convince me.
Okay.
That's what would raise my confidence.
Okay, let's say, so if you're in your room right now, like if something pops up, how would you know that God did it? Like, I guess, how is that a test for God? I don't get it. Like, example that you gave is you want to see something.
Yeah, I'd want a prediction where I can interact, and there's a testable prediction where I say, okay, in 2 minutes, I would like a puppy that isn't here to show up, or I'd like 2 minutes for something to occur, and I'm asking in the name of Allah, please peace be upon him, or whatever it is, and say this is the thing. And then when I don't do that, it doesn't happen. So I'm able to have an interaction that can be tested and seen by multiple people that is caused by my request.
Okay, so that still doesn't prove how would that convince you though? Like, I get it. You want, that's what would convince you. But again, if someone wanted to be skeptical, like, whom did you ask? Like, if you heard some sort of voice in the sky, how did you know that was God? Or how did you know that the puppy just didn't appear there from some other supernatural cause.
If a supernatural cause happens when I ask Allah for it, I will assume that either Allah did it or somebody who wants me to think they are Allah did it.
Okay, so you still will be. It'll still be a false belief. Then it's someone who's pretending to be Allah and causing these things to happen. Is so
I would at least believe something that could make a dog appear was hearing me say, Allah, please make a dog appear. And maybe a dog's a bad example because that's an unclean animal. So I can, a goat, maybe.
No, that's fine.
I've had a pet goat. I really like goats. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it could be anything else. That so your belief will still be false belief that that Allah exists because you just called out Allah's name, and something else supernatural caused that dog to be there. Like it doesn't really completely. What I'm saying is, if someone wants to be skeptical,
that something listening for me to say Allah did a thing. I don't have to know what that is. I don't have to assume that is actually Allah. This might be someone who says, I want to do a thing if they say Allah.
Okay.
I don't know. And if that belief is false, it's a modest claim. You follow?
Right.
It's trying to not assume that I know more than I do without ruling out the real truth of it.
So, okay, let's see if that happens. It does happen. So what would follow from that? Like, how are you going to change your life, I guess? If Allah does exist.
If there was a particular deity that I thought existed, I would pay a great deal of attention to the wisdom that they would bring me.
Okay. Wisdom, life, death, all of those things, right? So your ultimate
the advice of somebody who's really, really smarter than me is a good place for me to start. I should pay attention to that. It's at least a starting place.
And so if Allah says that you need to worship or pray 5 times a day, the truth would be to basically follow that command.
Yeah, if that turned out to be something that seemed to have positive benefit, and definitely, then sure.
Okay. All right. So yeah, that's interesting. So you would, if God does exist, you would worship God or change your life in a way that would bring you closer to God, and you would know about your future, basically, like and eventually whatever the claim this God is making is true, basically.
Well, I would lean that direction anyway. I would be still willing to
still have doubts.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily try to understand the exact nature, whether this God, for example, is fully supernatural or whether this is aliens that are of amazingly advanced technology to where I can't tell the difference. Either way, my action is kind of the same. Listen to them, try to follow their advice, because they're probably really smart.
Okay. But in terms of worship, like, who would you consider yourself that you would worship your creator, the one that you gave your life? Worship, and I would define worship here as worship is something you would pay your ultimate love, fear, and obedience to. That's my definition of worship. So if someone, whatever it might be, if let's say, if you believe that the fundamental particles of the universe, like the bosons and fermions, were your creator, right? So your ultimate veneration, your ultimate love, fear, and obedience should really, or ought really to be to those things, because you won't exist if those bosons and fermions and atomic particles didn't exist. So that's what I mean by worship, is that your existence is completely dependent on this entity. Again, okay, so I mean,
if it can kill me, sure. If something can kill me, I should fear it, but I'm not sure that's a reason for me to honor it.
What about the fact that it gave you life? Should you honor something
my mom
that gave
me
you life?
I don't honor her much.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
my mom gives me life, and I don't like her very much. So that would be an example of no.
okay. What if you take it back to the one that created? So you're saying that you won't honor something that gave you life, or
I don't see that as a reason to. I don't think I owe them anything,
okay? Is there anything else
God or
that
my parents.
is there anything that you do honor?
Yeah, I'm really into street epistemology, and I'm a big fan of the heroes that do it well, and I'm a big fan of the heroes that engage with it. I'm
Okay.
all about critical thinking. I think that's really fun stuff. So I want to honor the practice of critical thinking.
Yeah, but there would be no street epistemology if there was no God, creator of uh, the universe.
Unless there were no
You
God and
see,
we happened without it. Yeah.
Sorry.
Unless there were no God and we happened without it, then street epistemology would exist without a God. It's the question we're exploring.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess I was just going down the chain of your beliefs of why you believe or what you honor or fear things, and ultimately, if God is a creator, then I think I think it's perfectly rational from my perspective. If you were to ask me, like, for me to worship the creator that gave life to me, and will be responsible for my death or whatever happens to me in the future.
Yes.
Not just because, it's ultimately everything is in his hands. So, all right, cool.
I see that. Okay, thank you. Thank you for this conversation. I've really, really enjoyed it. I hope everybody else. Oh, Nir, yes, you have a question to voice. Please voice it.
Hey, sorry, I'm cutting the time kind of close here, but I was really curious about, and your name is Khalid, you said?
Yeah, Khalid.
Khalid. I was really curious about how you started off the conversation. I think Dolly asked you sort of what all these four sort of qualities that you attributed to Allah, which are, I think, it's, what did you say, unitary, all powerful, all knowing, and independent of the universe. Okay.
Independent of everything.
Independent of everything. Okay. To me, I think I might have missed something, but it kind of sounded like you said that what makes God all-powerful and all-knowing is the fact that he created the universe or the multiverse. Is that what you said?
Yeah. If whatever thing that caused this universe into existence must have the same amount of power or more than what is in the universe. And whatever you know about power is within the universe. I mean, you can speculate about multiverse or whatever. As far as energy and all these things that we know of are within the universe.
Is there, like, does that leave room for contemplation of something outside of or more complex than our universe? Or would you say that if, as much as we can imagine, it exists here?
Yeah, I don't think there's a need to speculate on other. You mean things outside the universe?
Yeah, because I guess what I'm wondering is, like, why does the creation of the universe imply omnipotence and omniscience?
Because so I would, counter question for you is what is your definition of power?
My definition of power? Wow, that's a tough one. Ability. I would just be giving a bunch of synonyms, I suppose.
Right. So if you were to contemplate or take it to the nth degree, whatever you can accumulate. So let's say a sun has power, other stars have power. If you were to aggregate the sum total of all these powers that are within the universe,
Hmm.
would you say that that's something that's powerful enough, or so something above than that? It would be all powerful. So that simply, I would put it that way, like the sum total of all the energy in the universe, um, and whatever created that thing should have more power than this universe, or at least the same amount.
Right.
There's no,
Yeah,
I mean, yeah,
either the same amount or more, but does that mean like infinite necessarily? And why?
infinite power. Um, yeah, I mean, if the other properties of this universe, of that entity, is that it is eternally existing, because something has to be eternally existing. Would you
Why
agree
not
with
the
that?
universe?
Because what we know of this universe, it is not that. It is precisely not. So, because I think there is a with the thing with infinite universe is that I think it is pretty much an impossibility. Then, in the sense that if you say there is infinity of this universe, like the reality that we live in, then every single possibility is possible, right? So that would entail that there are no truths out there. So you contradicting yourself. So you're saying that everything is possible. There are no truths. There's an infinity. So I don't think infinity in the sense of this reality exists in reality, because of the problem of not just even if you consider, although we know that this universe is not infinite because it has a beginning. But if you were to believe that this universe was caused by some other universe, that was caused by some other universe, I mean, the whole issue with infinite regress,
Mhm.
and the problem with that is we would never have this universe, because there would never be a beginning.
I have a lot more questions, but I don't want to like take up the time here. I'll send you a message.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much. We've gone a long time. I really appreciate you sticking it out with us. This has been a very interesting conversation for us. Thank you for joining in. Do you have anything?
No problem. It's good.
Do you have any last words that you'd like to share with the audience before I take us out?
No, not really. If you want to maybe do this again, or
Yeah, I'd like to.
sometime later.
Hit me up. You know how to see my
It was fun.
calendar, and hit me up when we'll schedule another time when it's good for you.
Sure.
Okay.
Awesome.
So here are 5 channels that I'm really into that are specific to street epistemology. This is a list of about 13 that are on the promoted channels list on my YouTube. If you are really into this method of street epistemology, my favorite site that collects all that stuff together is streetepistemology.com, brought to you by Street Epistemology International. And I promise it's not uniformly black. Apparently, our setup is missing one little piece. Thank you for coming to this session of Vanilla Street Epistemology. If you would like to be a guest on my show, I have this. This is one of 8 different categories of things we do on the topic of street epistemology. All I ask is that you be polite, articulate, willing to show your face, and stay on topic, something related to street epistemology. And I would look forward